Hey YouTube, it's Eric. I'm gonna try to keep this video pretty quick. In this video, I'm just gonna be exposing a guy called Nicholas Fredric Brady. He was a high-powered Vatican financier. He died in 1930. But I'm making this video because in the alternative media, you never hear the name Nicholas Fredric Brady brought up. You know, all these shows will get you to think that the Rockefellers and the Rothschilds. They'll even bring up the DuPonts from time to time. George Soros, Rupert Murdoch. Supposedly Rupert Murdoch's a Jew, but he's a knight of Saint Gregory the Great. But all these shows don't bring up the real powerful Roman Catholic banking aristocratic families. I'm just gonna expose the Brady family because you never hear the alternative media bring this name up. Just like you never hear the alternative media bring up names like John J. Raskob, a knight of Malta, knight of Saint Gregory the Great, high-powered financier at General Motors and DuPont who bankrolled the funding of the Empire State Building. Like another one I'm going to show you at the end of this video, Thomas Fortune Ryan was the richest man in the United States from 1870 to 1900, a devout Catholic. Thomas Fortune Ryan, a devout Catholic, even built like completely funded by himself, two massive Catholic cathedrals. One of them's in Richmond, Virginia. I'll show you his Wikipedia page. But Thomas Fortune Ryan, the devout Catholic, bankrolled the construction of the Tommy gun, which the Tommy gun that was used by the likes of like Al Capone and all these other Roman Catholic controlled gangsters at this time in history. I'm gonna show you here this estate here of Nicholas Frederick Brady that I found. I linked some of this in the description to start. And actually, here's a picture of him. Here's a picture of Nicholas Frederick Brady here on the right. Okay, I'm gonna show you. He was a director of over 50 corporations. This man was a real power. Here it says he was a chairman of over 100 corporations. Here's the middle here. You got Patrick Cardinal Hayes, who was decorated 4 times by Mussolini. And here on the left, you got the Knight of Columbus, Papal Chamberlain, Roman Catholic Al Smith, Governor of New York, presidential candidate in 1928. Al Smith was also the president of the American Liberty League, which was, as disclosed by Smedley Butler, the Liberty League was an organization that was directly involved in setting up a fascist coup d'etat in the United States in 1934. But here's Brady here on the right. Okay. But here's the story here, and here's his Wikipedia page. I recommend you read it. Okay, Brady was the first American to receive the Supreme Order of Christ, and this order doesn't even exist anymore. Okay, it was restricted by Pope Paul VI in 1966. Okay, Nicholas Brady was made a Supreme Order of Christ. There's the medal right there. Okay, it's very significant. Here's the Life magazine article. So this is one of the estates that the Bradys gave to the Jesuits. This was in 1937. This is called Innisfada, and here's the estate right here. Currently, I'm going to show you Fordham University. In 2013, Fordham University got the chapel to this real estate company. I'm pretty sure a Chinese company even bought up some of it. But the Jesuits did retain the chapel of this property in 2013 to Fordham University. But here's Innisfada Mansion. It was like a 250-acre mansion for the Brady family. Here's from Life magazine, issue May 24th, 1937. You see the Brady estate goes to the Jesuits. And here's more pictures of the estate here. I'll zoom in a bit so you can read on the screen. See, last February, Miss Genevieve Garana Brady announced that she was turning, quote, Innisfada, her great Long Island estate, over to the church. She served so well. A devout Roman Catholic, Mrs. Brady was giving Innisfada to the Society of Jesus to be used as a seminary. Mrs. Brady would no longer need Innisfada for a twofold reason. She was going to live in Rome. There she would be near the Vatican, where her heart has more and more turned. There also she would be the wife of William J. Babington Macaulay, Irish free or Irish state minister to the Vatican. In March, Mrs. Brady became Mrs. Macaulay. She was in her Roman villa last week while thousands of strangers roamed over Innisfada, came delightedly upon this little shrine in the inset above here to the right. I'll show you that. Crowded into its 87 rooms to buy its $600,000 worth of furnishings. For, the first 4 days of the auction netted 134,000. To the late Nicholas Frederick Brady, as devout as his wife, could have wished no better end for Innisfada. In 1926, the Bradys were made papal duke and duchess. Since Mr. Brady's death in 1930, Mrs. Brady has given generously to the church of the $50 million in utilities fortune her husband left. Church has been grateful. Cardinal Bizzano came to the dedicate in Espada in his private chapel to the right. I'm going to show you more pictures here. Notre Dame has awarded Mrs. Brady its Lactaire Medal. When Papal Secretary Cardinal Pacelli visited the U.S. last fall, he was the guest of the country's leading Catholic lady. And I'm going to show you, but when Eugenio Pacelli toured the United States in 1936, and he met with Roosevelt. He spoke at Jesuit Fordham, spoke at like Jesuit Loyola Chicago. He was talking to his American agents about Pro Dio, among many other things. But Eugenio Pacelli stayed at this uh, Innisfada mansion that was the Brady's mansion. So you see when Papal Secretary Cardinal Pacelli visited the U.S. last fall, he was the guest of the country's leading Catholic lady. He, Cardinal Pacelli, and Mrs. Brady would sit and talk of matters close to their hearts in Innisfada's great hall. Now this hall will become a Jesuit chapel. The fine bedrooms in Innisfada, plain Jesuit cells, and the spreading acres of Innisfada will be dotted with the black cassocked forms of grave young Jesuits. I'm going to zoom out here a bit more, and I'm going to show you the pictures, but here's the chapel room from the Brady mansion. Okay, right there. Here, I'll try to zoom in here on the left. Here looks like an entrance to the chapel. On the next page, here's another little clipping. Here, Innispada's furnishings are sold. Here's more pictures from inside the mansion. Okay, this is the Roman aristocratic blue blood class. You see here in the Great Hall hang valuable tapestries. The one far at the far end weaves the tale of the prodigal son. Those at the side describe the 15th century court life. The rug is the one which stood the coronation thrones of Edward VII and Alexandra. Okay, right here. I think those are the stones there on the right. There's more pictures here. Actually, here's a picture of like a Gregorian eagle. This heavy Gregorian table has a mosaic top made in Roman times. It shows a bird in a chariot driving two wild animals. The front support is a great gilded eagle. Notice in black the finely fluted Ionic pilasters in the wall paneling. Okay, so here's more pictures from inside the mansion. This is in Espada. Let's see if there's any more here. I think that was it covered from this Life magazine. Oh, there's a bit more here. In Espada furniture. Here's more pictures of inside the mansion. The master's bedroom had a Spanish Renaissance bed with forged iron bedposts to hold up the blue velvet canopy. On the far side is a prie-dieu. Like all other Innisfada bedrooms, this will be divided up into small plain Jesuit cells. There's more from Innisfada. The gold plated fixtures in the bathroom. This is at a time in history in America where like 40% of America was like unemployed and living like completely paycheck to paycheck. Many were starving in the Great Depression. Here are the gold-plated pictures of Mrs. Brady's bathroom are duplicated in two other bathrooms. All three sets will be removed for sale. And not for sale are the Innispada's two big oil-burning furnaces seen right here. Such huge furnaces are needed to warm a house so capacious that at one time it seated and served 85 guests at dinner. The furnaces will remain to heat the Jesuit seminary. Let me see if there's any more on the Innisfada. That might be all of it. And this is from Life magazine in 1937. Life magazine was owned by Skull and Bonesman Henry Luce. So I linked that in the description. I'm just gonna see if anyone is in the chat. And I'm gonna show you that Nicholas Fredric Brady, when he died in 1930, donated $2 million for another Jesuit novitiate in Pennsylvania. I think it was Warnersville, Pennsylvania. Give me a second here. Let's just see if anyone's in the chat. I'm just doing it because you don't hear the alternative media bring up the name Nicholas Frederick Brady. You don't hear them talk about Ed Doheny, Thomas Fortune Ryan, John J. Raskob, Alfred E. Smith. They don't talk about the Catholic banking class. Okay. So yeah, so here's the papal mansion, and so this is the next story I wanted to show you. This was from the New York Reading or the Reading Times of Reading Times, Reading, Pennsylvania, from 22nd of May, 1930. Okay, this is what I wanted to show you next. This is covering the story. Shout out to Johnny Cerrucci at Resistance Rising. He sent me an archive of this. Okay, so this is from the Reading Times from 1930. I couldn't. I'm gonna pull. I found pictures of the internet on this novitiate. So I'll make this full screen. Okay, so this is from the Reading paper, 1930. See, special train brings casket to novitiate. Body of Nicholas Brady laid in crypt at Wernersville in a $10,000 coffin. Widow accompanied. Hey, what's up, guys? I'm just saying, hey, what's up, N Goods? What's up, Rusted Soul? I'm saying, N Goods. I'm just, if you're still watching, I've in Johnny's chat, I saw you making comments on Johann Valentin and Andre, and I recommend you read. I put an article together that it's a lot of collaborating evidence that shows that he was Sir Francis Bacon on a pseudonym. And to me, it makes sense why, like, because Andre put the Jesuit IHS crest on his Christianopolis title page with like the Kabbalistic tree underneath. Bacon was like very Kabbalistic minded himself, and Bacon's best friend, his alter ego, actually, he called Toby Matthew his alter ego, but Tobias Matthew was a Jesuit actually. He donated all of his wealth to the Jesuits. Yeah, it's intriguing, but the Andre character is very intriguing because he connects like the Rosicrucians directly to the Jesuits, and like another just I'm gonna get back to the Nicholas Brady topic, but another so big Rosicrucian, Michael Meyer, was the medical advisor to King Rudolph II of Bohemia, and like Theodore Geisinger says Rudolph II was like a Jesuitically bigoted emperor, completely controlled by the Jesuits. That being Rudolph II. And I know Robert Flood was another Rosicrucian apologist, and I've seen it sourced on the internet. Seen it sourced on the internet that Robert Flood would spend multiple winters with the Jesuits. Do you think Sir Francis? Yeah, I could see that. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Bacon. Actually, yeah, in Sir Toby Matthews' biography, I think the author was Tom Arnold. You can get it on archive.org. The author quotes a Jesuit, and this he quotes the Jesuit saying that Sir Francis Bacon was a Jesuit with just like a fake name. It makes sense. Like Bacon does sound like it could be like a pseudonym in itself. It's interesting. Well, like in Toby Matthew is said to in that book, he's said to have converted Lord Calvert to Catholicism. Like Lord Calvert or George Calvert, who was the first Lord Baltimore, who was sent by James I to colonize Maryland under the faith of Roman Catholicism. It's definitely it's that whole Sir Francis Bacon, time frame in history is fascinating. To get back here to Nicholas Frederick Brady here, so this is from the Reading Times here from 1930. So with the simplest rites, the body of Nicholas Frederick Brady, New York financier, and actually just quickly with Bacon, I should mention this. He was a member of the Virginia Company, and I actually have a book from Manly Palmer Hall that has a stamp of the Newfoundland. Newfoundland was a British colony at this point, but there's a stamp of Newfoundland from 1640 with like the face of Sir Francis Bacon on it. So he was very intriguing and equivocal. And H.G. Wells quotes for Sir Francis Bacon and Crux Ansata, saying that Bacon's favorite educational system was the so Nicholas Brady's the New York financier and prominent Catholic layman was laid away yesterday in a crypt in the new Jesuit novitiate near Wernersville. Brady's gift of more than $1 million made possible the building of the novitiate in which he lies, a massive rambling building on a high sunny hill on the rim of the Blue Mountains. Placing of his body there yesterday was the first ceremony to be held in the building, which will not be dedicated until May 31st. Although Brady died March 27th in New York, his burial there was only temporary. The final obisques, if I'm pronouncing that wrong, being postponed until today to permit internment in the novitiate crypt just finished. And this is under the headline on special train. A funeral train of 4 cars bearing Brady's body in a combination car draped special on the inside with rich purple hangings carried. Oh, apologize here. Let me get back to where I was. Okay. With purple herrings carrying the former chairman of the board of the New York Edison Company to its final resting place. Preliminary services were held at 6 a.m. at the Church of St. Ignatius Loyola, 84th Street and Park Avenue, New York. From the church, the cortege proceeded by the 23rd Street ferry to the Jersey City terminal of the Central Railroad of New Jersey, where the special train was waiting. Attached to the train was Brady's private car, quote, the Adventurer, the combination baggage and passenger car holding the body, a dining car, and a day coach with a score of more persons. Outside relatives and friends attached to the funeral party, the train slipped out of the Jersey City terminal with few knowing its mission. The train made speed over the Jersey flatlands and the rolling country between Allentown and Reading, and got into Reading nearly a half hour ahead of schedule. A line of automobiles was waiting for it at the station at Wernersville for the mile-long drive through the sunny fields to the novitiate, where the party went directly to the crypt for a low mass of requiem. The Reverend Thomas A. Delahant, New York, close friend of the Brady family, sang the Mass. Several score of prominent Catholic officials, educators, priests, and Jesuits were present. Oh, I bet. Under the headline, the service is brief. The service in the little underground chapel where the marble crypt is built into a wall was very brief. Reverend Delahant sang the Mass. A vested choir sang the quote Benedictus. Candles guttered in the dimness of the tiny altar, and the ceremony was over. Not 15 minutes after the completion of the service, workmen had sealed up with the marble slab and a bit of plaster the $10,000 bronze casket into the vault. What a joke! Most people, like even today, like 70% of the world doesn't even have $10,000 to their name, and Nicholas Frederic Brady got himself a $10,000 bronze casket in 1930. Probably worth over $100,000 in today's money. But continuing, all visible that remained of the funeral after the sealing were two great crosses of gardens and orchards of the Beatitude. People will see another funeral, for before his death, Nicholas Brady used for the after the mass, the party was shown through the novitiate, but Mrs. Brady stayed back for a brief moment. Yes, Nicholas Frederick Brady had two wives, like Ed Doheny, and his second wife, like Ed Doheny's wife, became the papal duchess. But after the mass, the party was shown through the novitiate, but Mrs. Brady stayed back for a brief moment to pray silently and alone in the crypt. She rejoined the others in the main chapel on the first floor to look about the great building which she and her husband made possible. The half-hour inspection over the party returned to the special train waiting for them at a Wernesville station and returned to New York. In the party were Mrs. Genevieve Garvin Brady, the widow, Mrs. James C. Farrell, and the Reverend Mother Angelina, sisters of Mrs. Brady, Anthony H. Farrell, Brady's nephew, Mr. and Mrs. James C. Brady Jr., nephew and niece. Mrs. Genevieve Brady attended, a niece, Miss Fred S. Mosley Jr., a niece, and Mr. Mosley. Mr. and Mrs. Michael Scott, friends of the Bradys, Mrs. James C. Brady. Oh, give me a second here. I'm near the end of the article here. And this is a two-part newspaper clipping here from this one. I'm gonna make sure I read to you all the Life magazine article. Um, Mr. and Mrs. Michael Scott, friends of the Bradys, Mrs. James C. Brady, widow of a deceased brother of Nicholas Frederick Brady. Okay, so we're gonna go to page 14 here. Give me a second. Um, before I go to page 14, yeah, I made sure I just want to make sure I read this whole article. I linked this in the description so you guys can read this Life magazine article here. Page 14. Okay, here we go. Okay, here's the second part of this little news story here from the Reading newspaper. Okay, another sister of Mrs. Brady and Mr. Kavanaugh went. John D. Ryan, chairman of the board of Anaconda. I wonder if John D. Ryan was related to Thomas Fortune Ryan, the rich Catholic who I mentioned earlier. Was essentially the king of insurance and tobacco who funded the Tommy gun that was used by like Al Capone and the likes of all the other gangsters. Um, Mrs. Ryan attended. This is interesting here. So Nathan L. Miller was the Roman Catholic governor of New York, and he was the chief legal counsel to the United States Steel Corporation, the first billionaire corporation in the world. And the chairman of the United States Steel Corporation during the 1930s was Myron Charles Taylor, who went on to become President Theodore Roosevelt's Franklin Roosevelt's private papal envoy to Pope Pius XII. Nathan L. Miller was also in the American Liberty League, which had Knights of Malta and Knights of Columbus, papal chamberlains, John J. Raskib, and Alfred E. Smith as presidents. And the American Liberty League was promoting nothing less than a fascist dictatorship in the United States. Nathan L. Miller, part of the American Liberty League, Roman Catholic. Nathan L. Miller is in attendance, and Mrs. Miller. H. Laidlaw, secretary to Nicholas Frederick Brady. The very Reverend Lawrence J. Kelly, former provincial of the Society of Jesus. The very Reverend Coleman Neville, president of Georgetown University. Right after, and then the 30s, Georgetown University gave an honorary degree to the FBI director, J. Edgar Hoover. That's very important. Monsignor Philip Bernardini, stationed with the Apostolic Delegation at Washington, D.C., professor of law at the Catholic University, and nephew of Cardinal Gasperi, former Secretary of State, was in attendance. The Reverend Patrick O. Gronman, rector of the St. Ignatius Loyola Catholic Church, of which Brady was a member, was in attendance. The Reverend Vincent McCormick, president of the Woodstock College, Woodstock, Virginia, was in attendance. The Reverend William Talon, president of St. Joseph's College, Jesuit in Philadelphia, was in attendance. The Reverend William Devlin, president of the Jesuit Novitiate of St. Andrews on the Hudson in Poughkeepsie, New York, was in attendance. The Very Reverend Edward C. Phillips, provincial of the Society of Jesus, New York, in attendance. Monsieur Brady was the chairman of the board of the New York Edison Company and director of the United Electric Light and Power Company, the National City Company, the National City Bank, the Anaconda Company, and numerous other financial and business institutions. He was recognized as one of the leading Catholic laymen of the United States. Okay, so under the section here for training young men. In the entrance hallway of the novitiate, which he built, in an inscription to him and Mrs. Brady, it reads, quote, "This novitiate." Oh, give me a second here. This thing's really sensitive. Um, Okay, so in the novitiate, it's read, quote, on the an engraving, "This novitiate for training of young men destined to be priests or brothers in the Society of Jesus was erected in 1928 and 1929 by Mr. and Mrs. Nicholas Fredric Brady, and is placed at their request under the patronage of the heroic apostle of the Hurons, Isaac Jogues, martyr priest of the Society of Jesus. The Vitiate, which will eventually house 200 young men training for the Jesuit priesthood, occupies a hillside plot of nearly 300 acres about a mile northeast of the borough of Wernersville. It is valued at considerably more than $1 million and contains rare marbles, paintings, and carvings among its furnishings. The Jesuit priest for whom the building has been named, Isaac Jogues, was a missionary among the Huron Indians of New York and believed to be a sorcerer, was tortured and decapitated in 1646. He is about to be canonized by the Catholic Church. This novitiate, when it is completed and in use, will be one of the largest educational institutions in the Lebanon Valley. Okay, so there's a story there from the Reading Times, and there was another story here from the Reading Times. Or the Reading Times. Here are the pictures here. Yeah. Here's Nathan L. Miller showing up to the funeral here. Yeah. The devout Catholic fascist American Liberty Leaguer. You can see right here, Nicholas F. Brady, New York financier, philanthropist, and prominent Catholic layman, was buried yesterday in a crypt beneath the new Jesuit novitiate north of Wernersville. Brady and his wife gave more than $1 million towards the construction of the novitiate. At the top, $10,000 bronze casket bearing Brady's body is seen being borne. Oh, give me a second here. Although there's the casket up here. I'll zoom in on that. The bronze casket bearing Brady's body is seen below, being borne into the crypt chapel, where now low mass was sung. Below right is the widow, Mrs. Genevieve Garan Brady, and James C. Brady Jr., a nephew. Center right shows the great coffin being lifted from the special train which brought the funeral party to Reading. And I'm going to show you here in this video, actually, the Bradys are they actually financed the Chrysler Corporation. I found a source for that. Below are the former, then see below here are the former Roman Catholic fascist governor of New York, Nathan L. Miller, and Mrs. Miller, close friends of the Brady family. Makes sense. Okay. Okay, here's the photos here. Okay, here's the casket. Yeah, I found here's the pictures, or here's where's the novitiate? I had this up here. Here's the Brady novitiate in Wernersville, Pennsylvania. Here's the picture of it right here. Okay. Here's the inside. Okay. This is the Wernersville, Pennsylvania novitiate. Okay. And back to this Innisfada novitiate that that's right here. Okay, here's Innisfada. I link these in the description, but you can read here how the Jesuits actually got in the Innisfada village, or they got a couple of the chapels. Um, you see, the Jesuits are on the verge of closing a deal with a developer from Hong Kong with some preservationist fear will knock down the building. No, of course they're not. Okay. They won't allow that to happen. Okay, but here's another picture of the building. And actually, interesting with Nicholas Frederick Brady, the chapel has been dismantled for eventual reconstruction on Fordham's University's campus in the Bronx. Dear Cardinal Pacelli, who later became Pope Pius XII, prayed in the chapel while living briefly at the mansion. He lived there for 3 months during a 1936 trip to the United States. And Nicholas Frederick Brady's grandnephew was Ronald Reagan's Secretary of Treasury, Nicholas F. Brady, a Knight of Malta. Nicholas F. Brady, grandnephew and namesake, who was Secretary of the Treasury from 1988 to 1993, supported the Jesuits' decision. Quote, My great uncle wanted his benefaction to help the work of the Jesuits, end quote, he said, end quote. And in the very different circumstances of today's world, the Jesuits are the best judge of what will be of help to them, end quote. That's funny. Um, hey, how's it going, Ed Upside Down Head? How's it going? Yeah, I'm doing well. Yeah, actually, I'd be down to co-write a book with Johnny. I think that'd be a very explosive book. You know, Johnny's got so much great information. I've seen a picture of his like the dossier that he's got on his computer. That thing's crazy. I think that could give like Alan Dulles' dossier like a little run for his money. But yeah, I think that would be a really powerful book. I think me and Johnny got a lot of good information that if we put it all, you know, out in like chronological order and put it in a certain way, very very powerful. And here's another. I'm gonna show you another Brady that was powerful connected to Nicholas Frederick Brady was James Cox Brady. But actually, so I'm gonna leave this photo up here. And I had a book open here. I'm just gonna read you a little excerpt. The book I'm holding in my hand right now is titled "Everybody Ought to Be Rich." It was a biography that was written on the Knight of Malta, John J. Raskob, of the DuPont Empire, who funded the Empire State Building with Papal Chamberlain, Knight of Columbus, Knight of Malta, Al Smith, as seen in this photo on screen on the left. Okay, but Nicholas Frederick Brady is mentioned in this biographical book here on John J. Raskob. Yeah, so this is page 214 of Everybody Ought to Be Rich. I think it was published by Oxford, Oxford University. Spellman had proved his worth to his superiors at the Vatican in numerous ways, not least his ability and willingness to induce rich American Catholics to come to the aid of the church and its leaders. Actually, before this video is done, I'm going to show you a Jesuit, Anthony Escobar, actually encouraged Jesuits when in the act of stealing and robbing to actually steal and rob from rich people, not poor people. There's no like there's no excitement in stealing from a poor person, according to the Jesuits. They have to get a big booty from a rich lay Catholic. And then when you look at the Brady's, like I'm gonna show you more quotes here, but they essentially gave like huge amount of their money and their estates to the Jesuits. And you know, that could have been a state that could have been like Theodore Geisinger calls it Jesuit legacy hunting, how the Jesuits would steal the wealth of multiple families throughout Europe. And I think that's essentially they stole like all the Brady's money, which I think is it's kind of funny. That's what these Brady's get with fucking around with the Jesuits. You know, you reap what you sow. Okay, but continuing here. Spellman's first conquests were Nicholas and Genevieve Brady, who had a spectacular estate overlooking St. Peter's in Rome. So they had an estate overlooking St. Peter's in Rome as well. In rewards for generous donations to the church and to important church officials, Spellman arranged for Mr. Brady to be made a Knight of the Supreme Order of Christ and Mrs. Brady a Papal Duchess. The creation of the American chapter of the Knights of Malta and Raskib's membership therein was a piece with this new world campaign. End quote. That's the quote I wanted to read to you there. Okay, and there was Nicholas Frederick Brady was also involved with the National Security League, which is essentially like the precursor to the American Liberty League. The National Security League was preaching fascism and uh, they were preaching for America to enter World War One. And they're all like Duponts were advocating the use of poison gas. That's shown in this book here, the Dupont dynasty behind the nylon curtain. Nicholas Frederick Brady is briefly mentioned here. I'm just going to show you some quotes here. This is page 190 right here. Congress's declaration of war on Germany was a day for which some Duponts had worked for years. As revealed by a congressional investigation in 1919, T. Coleman Dupont in 1915 established with other leading industrialists and bankers the infamous National Security League to promote America's entry into the war. For 2 years before the declaration of the war, the National Security League, aiming to draw America into the conflict, published vicious attacks on congressmen who opposed entering the slaughter. When German submarine warfare threatened DuPont munition shipments, the League demanded that America defend her right to, quote, freedom of the seas and the right to sell military aid to Germany's enemy. Okay. Actually, and I'm just going to show you here that Nicholas Frederick Brady is sourced in this book here as being a member of the National Security League. This is page 191. Pro-war sentiments by was no means confined to the DuPonts. And guys, the DuPonts lawyer during the 1934 munitions hearings was none other than the Papal Knight of St. Sylvester, William J. Donovan, the head of the OSS during the entire World War II. And there's now a statue of William J. Donovan at Langley, the CIA headquarters. Okay, but pro-war sentiment was no means confined to the DuPonts. However, by 1917, war hysteria had been whipped up to a fever pitch. Coleman DuPont was not alone in setting up the National Security League. Joining him were other economic royalists: John D. Rockefeller, George W. Perkins of U.S. Steel. George Perkins was an American Liberty Leaguer. William K. Vanderbilt, Nicholas F. Brady of New York Edison, Henry H. Rogers of Rockefeller Standard Oil, Simeon, and Daniel Guggenheim of the Copper Trust, and predictably J.P. Morgan. Okay. Um, and this is from a liberal senator here, Senator Follett. Quote: "What do Morgan and Schwab, the Roman Catholic head of Bethlehem and Steel, care for world peace?" End quote. Queried Senator LaFleur. Quote: "When there are big profits in World War, the Schwab properties, which stood at a market value of 7 million before they began supplying the Allies, are today given an aggregate value of 49 million." End quote. And yeah, I think Charles Schwab was the first director of the Bethlehem Steel Corporation, and he was Jesuit or Roman Catholic. I don't think he was Jesuit educated. Um, Actually, just while I on the topic of the Duponts, I'm going to show you. There's a really interesting quote that I found in this Der Spiegel magazine, written on the Vatican finances in 1958. Aver used this. I'll link this in the description. This is a good source. Aver used this as a source in his book, The Vatican Billions. That's how I found this article. DuPont is mentioned here briefly, and it's significant because the article quotes Alfred DuPont talking about the Society of Jesus. And the DuPont's lawyer during 1934 hearings was William Donovan, who was an agent of the Jesuits. Okay. Um, Let me see here. Actually, yes, it says here the Jesuits are involved in the major U.S. steel companies: Republic Steel, National Steel, as well as four major U.S. aircraft plants: Boeing, Lockheed, Douglas, and Curtiss-Wright. The Jesuits also control Independent Petroleum Company, the Phillips Oil Co. in Galveston, and the Croyle Petroleum Oil Co. Okay, so Bethlehem's not mentioned here, but this is what I wanted to show you here. Here, I'll zoom in on this. Again, this is Der Spiegel, August 8th, 1958. I just copied this word for word. Okay. Um, let's see here. Okay, so this is where I'm going to start. Until American companies launched competitor companies in South America a few years ago, the Society of Jesus also had a monopoly on mercury. In fact, in 1923, the order's financial experts managed to seize all the shares of Almaden. Okay, I'll copy and paste this corporation here, which is a Spanish mercury company. See Almaden Minerals. See right here. Uh, In 1923, the Jesuit order's financial experts managed to seize all the shares of Almaden's famous Spanish mercury mines held by the Madrid bank Banco Hispano Americano. From the point of stock market history, it was a masterly coup, for the Jesuits beat America's largest chemical concerns, no small fry themselves, DuPont de Nemours, out of the field, who also wanted to acquire the Alamedan shares. The founder of this trust, Alfred DuPont II de Nemours, said then, quote, I have a great I have had great experience. One should never argue with priests, especially the Jesuits. End quote. That's Alfred Dupont II saying that. Okay. Well, absolutely. Yeah, there's free energy tech back in 1890 with Nikola Tesla and Victor Schauberger. The energy tech has been here for forever. And like interesting, I know with Tesla, like J.P. Morgan was like pulled the funding from him, and J.P. Morgan was in the Vatican knighthood of Saint Martinus and Lazarus. And coincidentally, like J.P. Morgan was in Rome when he passed away, which I thought was interesting. J.P. Morgan, bankrolled organizations like the American Liberty League and the National Security League. But in 1932, the Jesuits acquired the Tuscan mercury mines in Italy, which, together with Almaden, who the Jesuits, beat DuPont out, getting the shares in, supplied the world market of mercury almost exclusively until a few years ago, that being 1958. And actually, I'm going to read. I found this. Someone reprinted this article in full here. This was a Time magazine article from Monday, April 7th, 1930, called "Business and Finance: The Brady Estate." I link this in the description here, but this is a little blog here called Movers and Shakers of the Sovereign Military Order of Malta. Um, Let me see here. Yeah, so I'm going to read this from the top. You see, this is word for word, word for word. You see here this article here starts as it must to all men. You see here that so this is quoting here from the Time magazine article, Monday, April 7th, 1930. As it must to all men, death came last week to Nicholas Frederic Brady, chairman of New York Edison Co., director of 50 other companies, mostly utilities, known as the quote greatest lay Catholic, probably closer to more respected by the Vatican than any other U.S. citizen. And I'm just making this video because you don't hear the name Nicholas Frederic Brady in the alternative media. Nicholas Frederic Brady was the first United States citizen to receive the title Ordo Supremo de la Cristo, a Catholic honor. That's the Supreme Order of Christ, a Catholic honor far more distinguished than the Laetare Medal awarded last year to Alfred Emmanuel Smith, Papal Chamberlain, Knight of Columbus, and this year last week to Frederick P. Kenkel, the St. Louis editor. Of the Brady donations to the Vatican were many, large, discreet. A constant visitor to his last bedside was Cardinal Patrick Cardinal Hayes. You see them in a photo right here. Okay, there's Patrick Cardinal Hayes and Nicholas Frederic Brady. Okay, who conducted the funeral service. But though his church was dear to him, Nicholas Frederic was also carefully attended the business which his father left him and which made possible all the Brady donations to that church. It was Anthony Nicholas Brady, father of Nicholas Frederic, who founded the Brady fortune, at one time the greatest in the U.S. Anthony Brady, born in Lille, France, went to Troy, New York in 1857, worked first in the barber shop at Albany's Old Delavan House. At 19, he started a tea store, soon opened branches. His first utility interest was acquiring stock in the Albany Gaslight Co., a genius for consolidation. In a comparatively short time, he acquired control of Manhattan utility and traction companies. In 1887, Anthony Brady reorganized the Manhattan's elevated railway and subway systems and held until his death a majority of the stock of the Brooklyn Rapid Transit Company. And guys, the seal of the city of Brooklyn to this day has the Virgin Mary holding a Roman fasci. And there was a Jesuit Brooklyn Prep that closed in 1976 that you should check out their alumni list. From some that I can think of right now, Joseph Califano Jr., Jimmy Carter, Secretary of the Treasury, Joe Paterno, the football coach who did nothing to stop the pedophile Jerry Sandusky, and Thomas Beatty, who wrote all the Exorcist movies, went to Jesuit Brooklyn Prep, and many more. Um, so you see here, Nicholas Anthony Brady held majority stock of the Brooklyn Rapid Transit Co., now Brooklyn's Manhattan Transit Co. He died in 1913 of indigestion in London while traveling with restaurateur Louis Sherry. He left an estate estimated at $85 million. To his sons, James Cox and Nicholas Frederick Brady, came the job of managing the estate. Uh, no no business did Anthony leave to his heirs, but stock in half a hundred companies. In number 70 Broadway are located in the offices of the Anthony Nicholas Brady estate. Here, instead of Mr. Brady, an entire business organization devotes itself to doing with Mr. Brady's money what he himself might have done with it were he still alive. Sufficiently vast was Mr. Brady's fortune to make his estate, like devout Roman Catholic Thomas Fortune Ryan's, a business in and itself. Affiliated with so many mobile companies, it cannot remain dormant. Anthony's two sons managed the estate until the death in 1927 of James Cox Brady. Thereafter, until last week, Nicholas Frederick managed it virtually alone. The size and importance of the Brady estate can perhaps best be apprehended by a cursory list of the companies of which Nicholas Frederick Brady was director. Important among these was Consolidated Gas Co. of New York, and Anthony, long interested in Consolidated Gas, was largely responsible for the installation there of his friend George Bruce Cordelio as president, and the Chrysler Corporation. When Walter P. Chrysler was founding the company, his since famed company, it was that Brady estate money which practically financed his project, that being Walter Chrysler's Chrysler project. Other companies of which Nicholas Frederick Brady was a director were Anaconda Copper Mining Company, Chile Copper Company, Union Carbide and Carbon Corp., and the Mohawk Hudson Power Corporation, and dozens of other power and light companies, mostly in New York State and Japan. Anthony Brady had two sons whom could he leave the management of his estate, but last week when Nicholas Frederick died, there was only one male Brady, James Cox Jr. Nicholas himself had no children. James Cox Jr. was the only son of James Cox's five children. Facing him last week and facing the husbands of his four sisters and others who have worked in the Anthony Nicholas Brady estate was the same job which Anthony left his two sons in 1913. Though one male Brady is left in the family estate, though one male Brady while I apologize, only one male Brady is left, the family estate is as large and exacting as it was when there were three. The death of Nicholas did not mean less activity at number 70 Broadway. Okay. And you see here, like, here's more sources here saying that Nicholas Frederic Brady was native Knight of Malta. Okay. You see here, this is quoted here from. You can find this. I would open this, but for some reason my computer's not opening up this link. But this is quoted from StIgnatiusLoya.org. You see here that by 1930, the Bradys had given more than $2 million for the buildings and grounds of the Jesuit Center in Warnersville, Pennsylvania. Okay. Here's a quote from His Eminence Patrick Cardinal Hayes. Okay, quote: "Church, country, and city may well lament the passing of Nicholas Frederick Brady, a lovable personality whose sublime Christian faith, unbounded charity, inspiring family life, notable citizenship, and sensitive fidelity to high ideals in business relations leave an impress long to be remembered and cherished by a host of friends who deeply mourn their personal loss." End quote. Okay. Said by Patrick Cardinal Hayes, who was decorated by Mussolini 4 times. Mussolini, who had a Jesuit confessor, its father, Taci Venturi. Okay. Yeah, and actually, and this is quoted in John J. the book I was quoting earlier from John J. Raskob. It's written that Nicholas Frederick Brady was made a Knight of Malta. Here's his Wikipedia page. Um, there he is here. And he's director of over like 100 corporations. Okay, I make this stuff up. Okay. And then the mansions I brought up, the Innisfada mansion was donated to the Jesuits. Yeah, and Brady's wife was a dame of the Order of Malta and a dame of the Order of the Holy Sepulchre as well, and the Pro Ecclesia a Pontifex. Actually, Donald Trump's been like interesting. Like, I found Donald Trump came up in Atlantic City, and like Atlantic City, as disclosed in the Kefauver committee hearings, the mob bracket that was being run out of Atlantic City was being run by Jesuit educated Frank S. Farley, the Republican congressman from Atlantic County. And yeah, like, no doubt, like, Trump like inherited that, like, a racketeering front. Donald Trump talks about how you'd go to the Catholic Al Smith dinner like as a boy even. Let me check it. I think there's something else I wanted to. Yeah, there was another link I wanted to show you here. Give me a second. I found this link of this estate, this like New Jersey estate that the Brady's are a part of, and actually you can find a YouTube video of a Jesuit talking at the Innisfada mansion. Let me see here. Give me a second. Innisfada. Where did I put this? Here's the YouTube video. I think I linked this YouTube video in the description. Pause that. Okay, there it is. Yeah. So this is called "Take a Look Inside the St. Ignatius Retreat House." But I was saying Donald Trump's sister donated $4.5 million to the Jesuits at Fairfield University. So the Trumps are acting, very similar to the Brady's. And Donald Trump's older sister Marianne was quoted saying how much he loves Ignatian spirituality. Here's some pictures of the mansion here from the video. Here's some more of them. This is the Innisfada mansion. There it is right there. Yeah, I had this link open. Here, give me a second. I think I have this. Document. Yeah, here's the journal right here. Yeah, so I found this estate's called the Hamilton Farm, and this was donated by James Cox Brady, the brother of Nicholas Frederick Brady. Here's a picture of the estate here. Okay. So yeah, as stated in the National Register of Historic Places, the Hamilton Farm Stable Complex is historically significant in a quote, illuminating the upper class fascination with horse breeding, carriage driving, and riding during the early 20th century. Actually, Jesuit educated, the Jesuit educated Frank S. Farley, who's running the Atlantic City mob scene, was like the chairman of like the Atlantic City Horse Racing Commission. So like the mafia, the Catholic Church, and horse racing, like all go hand in hand. But one of the hundreds of country houses and gardens built during the country place era, few could claim the comprehensive business-like and integrated enterprise exemplified by James Cox's Brady's Hamilton Farm. Over 5,000 acres and maintained by a staff of hundreds, this vast agricultural showplace was renowned in its day and after. And here's an image of the Brady estate here at the Hamilton Farm. Okay, you see here, this is like a real power class that runs like the United States. Okay, look at that. Okay, the vast wealth necessary to acquire, develop, and maintain the enormous Hamilton Farm estate was primarily created by James Cox Brady's father, Anthony Nicholas Brady. And actually, here's a picture of Anthony Nicholas Brady right here, and I read to you a bit about him from earlier. Okay, so you see, Brady saw the same potential in the consolidation of public utilities. It was essentially the same business model followed by John D. Rockefeller in oil, Andrew Carnegie in steel, and James B. Duke in tobacco. Um, Yeah, I found it. So this is James. Interesting here. James Cox Brady was in the Scroll and Key Society at Yale University. Another interesting. J. Peter Grace, the president of the Knights of Malta, and actually, when if you watch my video of Ronald Reagan talking at the Knights of Malta, I found the archive of that footage. Ronald Reagan talks at the Knights of Malta dinner in 1989, and he calls J. Peter Grace Mr. President. So you see how like, Ronald Reagan is like just submitting like a little bitch to the Vatican. Okay, but J. Peter Grace, the president of the Knights of Malta, is also in the Scroll and Key. So you see here the Brady family was connected to the Scroll and Key. So that's a very powerful society. Here we see James Cox Brady, the creator of Hamilton Farm, was born in Albany, New York, 1882. He was one of the 8 children, including 2 sons who lived to adulthood. Born to Anthony Nicholas Brady and Marcia Ann Myers. Like Nicholas Fredric, his older brother, James attended the Albany Academy, a military day school, then enrolled at Yale, from which he graduated in 1904. At Yale, he was elected to Scroll and Key, one of the school's, quote, Big Three elite secret societies, end quote. Okay. Through managing their father's estate and vast diverse business interests and investments, they got full-time jobs. Or Nicholas and James Brady got full-time jobs. And here's the information here with the Chrysler Company. And actually, Lee Iacocca, the former chairman, I think he may still be president of Chrysler as a Knight of Malta. And got the big like $100 billion bailout from George Bush. But for example, in the 1920s, James Cox Brady played an important role in the creation of what became the Chrysler Corporation. James and his brother Nicholas Frederick had been large stockholders and members of the board of directors of the Maxwell Motor Company, which by 1920 had become saddled with a large amount of debt and was near bankruptcy. The Bradys, who had come to know Walter P. Chrysler and had played a role in his previous appointment at the Wilson Overland Automobile Company, arranged for Chrysler to join Maxwell in what turned out to be a successful effort to turn the company around. A few years later, the Maxwell Motor Company became the Chrysler Corporation, and over the following years, several members of the Brady family sat on the company's board of directors at Chrysler. Okay. See, while his brother James Cox Brady donated generously to Yale, including the establishment of the Anthony N. Brady Memorial Foundation and the Anthony N. Brady Memorial Laboratory at the Yale School of Medicine. In memory of his first wife, James Brady founded the Elizabeth Jane Hamilton Brady Memorial Day School in Covenant at Our Lady Perpetual Help Catholic Church in Bernardsville. And in memory of his second wife, he established Villa Victoria, the mother house of an order of Italian nuns at Trenton, New Jersey. I'm just gonna show you some more pictures. I'll try. I'll find. I'll try to link this Hamilton Farms article in the description here. Here's some. Here's like the here's see, here's the first Brady family mansion at Hamilton Farm, completed in 1914. And you see here, and what do you know about, if anything, about the boys club connected? Are you talking about like boys clubs? Are you talking about like Boy Scouts? The Boy Scouts like were like a military like the Boy Scouts like were connected to the machine from day one. Actually, in the DuPont Dynasty book I read from earlier, there's information how the Boy Scouts were like like well connected to the American Legion even in their founding. And Jesuit educated former Secretary of Defense, Director of Central Intelligence Robert Gates was currently the president of the American West Coast Eagle Scouts, Eagle Boy Scouts. Super cringeworthy, but Here's the first Brady estate, though. Here's the inside of the Brady's got their indoor swimming pool in 1914. Okay, of course, the Brady's aren't going to go out to the war. Of course not. They're not. Okay, here's the second Brady mansion. Okay. Here's the living room in the second Brady mansion. Okay. Here's another. Here's the farm that the Brady's built. Okay. I think that's all the pictures that are in here. Actually, interesting here. Like this is the last thing I'll say is here. In 1961, 11 years after the founding of the United States Equestrian Team, the Brady Security and Realty Corporation, I guess that was a new Brady Corporation, family corporation that was found. The Brady Security and Realty Corporation leased the Hamilton Farm stable facility and some considerable surrounding acreage, become the United States Equestrian Team's permanent home for training and housing of both horses and riders. Yeah, so like horse racing and the Jesuit establishment are very what like I'm gonna look more in because like essentially all these guys will be in the know on like who's gonna all the horse racing is completely rigged and it's just a way for these rich aristocrats to get tons of money. Obama bailout. Yeah, it was was it Obama? I thought the Chrysler bailout was that like was when doesn't matter. Like, both Obama and Bush like they were equally as tools of the Jesuits. Uh, Obama nominated a Jesuit Thomas Reese to like the International Council of Religious Freedom. Just like a mockery. Um, yeah, just with Pope Francis being the first like full-on Jesuit as a pope, it makes me think that like there could be like another 9/11 possible false flag that's going on. That definitely something's gonna happen. But like Pope Francis as the head of the Jesuits is still like being the Pope. He's nothing but like a puppet to Arturo Sosa S.J. Like the Jesuits. I've good information for that, and there's information on the Jesuit constitutions. And Theodore Greisinger's book on the Jesuits, Giovanni Niccoloni's book on the Jesuits, and R.W. Thompson's book on the Jesuits, all quote the official Jesuit constitutions. And you see that like the Jesuit general is regarded as like Christ on earth, and yeah, it's completely totalitarian. Like Jesuit general is like an absolute ruler, and you see that when you read the constitutions. And that's why like when the Jesuit constitutions were read at like the Parliament of Venice in 1601, like the people were so repulsed that like the Jesuits were banned from Venice. Consequently, when the Jesuit constitutions were read at the French Parliament in 1961, like the Jesuits were then banned from France because like the French government was so disgusted at the shamelessness and the hideousness of the Jesuit doctrine. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the boss stays the same. Yeah, absolutely. Actually, the Jesuit general is elected for life. So we have like there's two like Jesuit generals right now because Adolfo Nicolas is still technically elected for life. But I think I'm gonna end it here. But you see here, the Brady family is very intriguing. They gave millions of dollars to the Jesuits. They gave millions of dollars of their estates to the Jesuits. They're connected to even like the Yale secret societies. They're connected to the founding of Chrysler and many other things. Frederic Brady was a director of 100 corporations. And Alfred de Dupont II, I showed you here, like he quoted saying that I'm a very experienced man, but I've learned not to argue with Jesuits. Okay. Again, the Duponts weren't small fry themselves. The Dupont's lawyer during the munitions hearing was William Donovan, the papal knight who was the head of the Office of Strategic Services. Okay. Well, absolutely, yeah. Like he, absolutely, yeah. Like, if you're gonna call any figure, like if you're gonna identify like the Antichrist to like one figure, like it would be the chair of the papacy. You know what I mean? Like there's so much blood on the hands of the Pope. It's mind blowing going through history. But yeah, I think that's all for this one, YouTube. Peace and love, and Nam Nast. I'll catch you guys on the next video.